Actually, I have a question for this audience. How many of you grew up with a lot of political discussion, family, school, kitchen table? A lot of us. Okay, we were probably might have been socialized into politics pretty early. I feel like my friends and my peers who weren't, I'll often hear from them after something really bad happens, as we've touched on, right? Should I go to this rally? Hey, is it effective if I hit up my member of Congress? And I think we've gotten really good at mobilizing those people during those times of crisis. And we see this in the data, right? We score people on their propensity for activism. We score people on how much they demographically look like other people who are already active in politics and all the biases inherent in that. So that shows up in the data. And what I worry about is that after those moments of crisis, we have these times of extremely high salience. Women's March, we had 3 to 5 million people in the streets. After the police killed George Floyd, we had 15 to 26 million people in the streets. And from a political science perspective, when you have that many people in the streets, like, the government gets overthrown in other countries, right? And that didn't happen here because I think our opposition has gotten really good at deflecting our mobilizations. They've gotten really good at strategic silence. They've gotten really good at undercutting policy from behind, right? In ways that are not terribly visible. That's hard to deal with. Some creative stuff I think we can do as activists is to push our policymakers and our allies in government to give people more substantive avenues for their activism. So don't just, protest me. Sure, you're protesting me. I'm threatened. Maybe I'll do something good in response and you'll stop protesting me, right? But what can you actually do with that energy? How are we inviting people into policymaking processes? And I'll give you an old example I like from Texas, which is in the 90s. The Democrats controlled the state Senate. And they wanted to do some stuff to reform the energy system in Texas. And they got the utilities to sponsor what they called a deliberative polling exercise. And the utilities polled people. They selected people by sortition out of that poll, like you would for a jury. And they held educational town halls with those citizens. And what came out of that process was, maybe we should support clean energy a little bit more. So we have a ton of fossil fuel infrastructure in Texas. We also have a ton of wind. And it's because of that political compromise in the 90s that got Texas started down on that path. And it's because policymakers were able to invite people into the process in a way that wasn't super threatening to the policymakers. And I say that I don't want this to come across cynically, but if you want to take a slightly controversial position as a political leader, it's often very helpful to say, well, we went through this deliberative public process, and this is what the public wants. I think part of our job as activists is to say, not just how do we manage public opinion, but how do we actually help create public opinion, and how do we create more resources, frankly, for public engagement and opportunity out of our agencies and our legislatures.